Hello, and welcome to the Valley today. I am your host, Janet Michael. We are back on the Zooms today with Les Sinclair. He is the Communications and PR Manager for the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. We talk to Les every couple of months, starting, I think, Les in October. We're going to go every month until the end of the year because the need rises dramatically in the fall and during the holidays. So I appreciate that you're pacing yourself doing the show with me these days.
It's like a marathon, and these are the last few months of the year, really. You got to pick up your pace.
Although it seems weird to me that we're sitting here mid-August talking about the end of the year, but it happens a lot quicker than people realize.
It comes really fast.
We're going to talk a little bit about senior citizens and their relationship with food insecurity. National Senior Citizens Day is August 21st, which is Friday, as people are listening on the radio on Wednesday afternoon. And that is a pretty large part of the population that you serve are those senior citizens.
You can imagine what it's like being a senior citizen, somebody who's retired, they've done everything, they've worked their entire life, they paid into the system, and now they're retired and they're living on a fixed income. And then things happen in the world, and that income doesn't go as far as it used to. So gasoline prices nudging $4 a gallon. That makes travel exceptionally hard. That also increases the cost of everything, including food. Housing just continues to rise. Clothing costs more. All of these things, medication, healthcare, just keep going up and up and up. And if you're living on a fixed income that is not following that same trajectory, you're on the downside. And so more and more of the seniors will come to the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank and its partners to seek food assistance help. And you mentioned the size and scale. So about 1 in 5 of our guests are seniors.
I also want to make sure people realize and understand that unlike someone like me who's not yet on Social Security or has reached that fixed income point, I can go get an extra job. I can deliver groceries for Walmart or Uber or those kinds of things. These seniors are limited because they're getting that Social Security that they can't go out and pick up a second job because then that impacts the money that they get. So their financial freedom really isn't free.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how that Social Security check works. You can earn a certain amount of money, but then they start pulling money back out of your Social Security check once you breach a certain level. And there's also a health concern too. I spoke with a guest who wanted to go back to work. He was a truck driver his entire life. And he said, I would go back to work in a minute if I could, but he had a heart condition. He had a heart attack on the job and was not allowed to work. And so when you're not allowed to work and you're given X amount of money, that's your plot in life. And you've got to figure out how to make that work.
We've had several conversations over this past year about just the big number of people that you serve, not specifically seniors. And we talked at length about how it was one number and then there was a pandemic. And then after the
Yeah.
pandemic, there's somewhat of a new number. Can we talk a little bit about that broader number? And then I want to make sure people understand that you're not just serving Winchester or just serving the Shenandoah Valley.
We serve 25 counties, about a third of the state. It goes from Winchester to Lynchburg and straddles the Blue Ridge all the way down. Now, that number is our partners and us together serving 178,700 guest visits every single month. If that 178,700 individuals stood shoulder to shoulder, that would be a line of people 42 miles long. That's about from Winchester to Warrenton.
Wow.
And that's every month.
I love that you put it that way because I think we've all stood in line for something that we thought was way too long of a line. I have
Yeah.
stood in line way back in the day for Harry Potter books were coming out. But this is incredibly crazy to think about that it is that many people and that it's not just happening to us here. This is a statewide and a national problem.
Yeah, it's a national problem. We're seeing this growth all over the country. For us, year over year, this is a funny way to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's only 4% growth year over year. But here's the staggering number. In the past 3 years, it's 40% growth. And since the pandemic, 70% growth. So we are just seeing more and more people who are needing food assistance and turning to the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank network of food pantries to find that.
You were talking earlier when we were talking about senior citizens about some of the factors, fixed incomes, higher costs of housing and gasoline and that sort of thing. But when you start to drill down into some of our more rural communities, like we are for the most
Yeah.
part here in the Shenandoah Valley, most people don't think of Winchester as rural, but in the grand scheme of things, it really is. There are a lot more factors that also impact our seniors right here in our backyard.
Yeah, there's the gasoline factor. There's the factor of isolation. These rural communities, many people have to drive a half hour just to get to a grocery store. That's a half hour one way. That's a half hour back the other way. I've talked to many seniors who limit their trips to once a month. And what they try to do is everything they can possibly do in that one single trip so that they don't have to use their gasoline unnecessarily. So they'll go to a food pantry, they might go to a grocery store, they'll get their prescriptions, they'll run all of their errands and pay their bills on one day in one trip just so that they can save money.
And that's if they have a car and a driver's license. That also isn't the case for every senior across the board.
Yeah, this living in a rural community is wonderful. We love the Shenandoah Valley, right? Get to go outside and look at this beautiful scenery, but it comes with some challenges, and those challenges are typically lack of grocery stores. There aren't a whole lot of them in many places. If you look at places like Highland County, for instance, in Virginia, which is in our service region, doesn't have a grocery store in the entire county, not one grocery store. So people in Highland County have to travel in order to get their groceries. And then there's that, as you aptly pointed out, there's that transportation issue. So if your car is on the fritz, that's a problem. If it's old, if you've got to travel an extensive amount of miles, or in the wintertime when it gets really extra hard to drive on these icy and wet roads, that's a real challenge. Some people just don't feel comfortable driving anymore once they reach a certain age. So there's a lot of challenges to living in a rural community, even though it does present wonderfulness that is living in our communities. And the likelihood is that they may be living in a home that they own, and maybe that was generational passed down through their family.
Public transportation is sometimes a double-edged sword because that
Yeah.
doesn't exist in most of your counties. It exists in your city. Like Winready is in Winchester. I know Front
Yeah.
Royal has a bus system that runs within the town, but that doesn't typically go out into the county, which is where a lot of sometimes these grocery stores and things like that are.
Yeah, and these bus systems are fantastic. They really help connect people, but they have their own challenges. Now, imagine this. If you're a senior and you go to a food pantry and you pick up what typically is about 50 pounds of food, let's just say you get 30 pounds of food. And then you get on the bus, you've got to ride the bus to where you're going to go, and then you might have to walk a half mile to a mile home with 30 or 50 pounds of food. It's really challenging.
Food isn't the only thing. I remember several years ago, United Way did the Alice Challenge. And so they encouraged people to live a day or live a week like someone who is Alice, which is asset limited, income constrained, and employed. And one of the challenges was the laundromat. So it's the same issue. If you're a senior and you're living in an apartment that doesn't have laundry on site, and you got to truck all of your dirty laundry in a bag to a bus, to a laundromat, wash it, clean it, put it back in the bag, back on the bus, back to your house. It is just crazy what people have to do sometimes that are dependent on that public transportation.
That too. I mean, I don't know if you've been to a laundromat lately, but they're pricey, and that is extra income that folks don't have. So many people will do what my family used to do when we were kids, and that was wash our clothes in the bathtub and hang them out on a clothesline. So it can be really expensive living the way that many people have to live.
Are seniors typically eligible for SNAP benefits?
Yes, but it all depends on the income. SNAP is for people who earn below a certain level of income. And here's a for instance. So, a single person in Virginia making $30,000 a year is not eligible for SNAP. So they
What?
would, yeah, they will not receive SNAP because they make too much money. So seniors depends on their income. And then there are all these deductions that you can or cannot take. It's also a 15-page small font college level reading application. So you've got to be in it, and then you can get as little as $24. And so that's a lot of effort for simply $24 a month. Now, there's an effort underway in Virginia that might come to fruition where they bump that up for seniors and they provide seniors a little extra money. So it could be 50, it could be $100. The Virginia Commission to End Hunger is actually working on this and trying to figure out where to take this. But yeah, so you could get as little as $23, $24, which is not nothing, by the way. I want to point out that I've talked to seniors and when they get the minimum, they say, look, that's a pack of meat, that's a loaf of bread. It's some basics that will help supplement my food budget. And then they can go to a food pantry and pick up even more.
I think sometimes too, we forget that there are a lot of seniors in our communities that are raising their grandchildren, that have
Uh,
children that are still living in their homes with them.
Yeah, the children are great. And there are some great generational benefits to having the child and the grandparent living together. Many of these grandparents are actually raising the children alone without the parent. So something happened in their life, could be a multitude of things. But the presence of a child in a home, especially for a senior, makes food insecurity astronomical. So if you are a senior and you've got a child in your home, it's more likely that you have food insecurity than not. And that's got a lot to do with just children cost a lot, and we know that.
Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the programs that you offer through the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. I know we've talked about reach boxes, you have senior food boxes, all sorts of things. Can we get in the weeds a little bit on what those are and how people can learn more about them in the next segment?
Let's do it.
We are on the Zooms today with Les Sinclair. He is the communications and PR manager for Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. National Senior Citizen Day is Friday, August 21st. So we are talking about the senior citizen food insecurity need that we have in our community. We're going to do more of that when we come back in just a couple of minutes.
This Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. She doesn't know that yet. All she knows is that she went to justserve.org and volunteered an hour of her time. Browsing through dozens of service opportunities in her community, April decided to spend her Tuesday evening serving dinner to mothers and their children at a transitional house. She doesn't know she'll be serving a particular mother and daughter who will be spending their first night in this home. April doesn't know that the hot meal she'll serve is the first this mother and daughter will have had in a week, or that the simple smile she'll offer as she serves them will help them realize that things are going to be all right. Which is why this Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. See the difference you can make. Sign up for service opportunities in your community. Visit justserve.org.
Welcome back to the Valley. Today, I am your host, Janet Michael. We are on the Zooms today with Les Sinclair. He is the communications and PR manager for Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. We talk with Les every couple of months about food insecurity and all of the programs that they offer through the food bank. National Senior Citizen Day is this Friday, August 21st. So we're focusing our conversation a little bit more on senior food insecurity today. And Les, we talked a little bit in the first segment about all of the factors that play into why a senior citizen might have need of the use of a food pantry. And you guys understand and recognize that and have programs that are specifically built in some cases for senior citizens.
We've got the Reach boxes, and these are about 30 pounds of food that is highly nutritious, shelf stable for the most part, but there are some vegetables that go along with it, some produce that goes along with it as well. And this is designed for seniors so that they can receive this box of food and go on their way and have several nutritious meals out of this box. There's another program that's run from the USDA. It's called the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. CSFP is the acronym. We call them senior food boxes, and they are packed in our Charlottesville branch and then distributed all over our region. So Winchester, Verona, Charlottesville, and Lynchburg, the 25 county service area. And those go to people who qualify for that program through the USDA. So that is government food. It's provided by the government, packed here at the food bank, and then sent right out to the people who receive those boxes. That's the government's food. They own it until it is received by the person who's supposed to get it. And then in general, the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank and its network of partner pantries are just here to make sure that our seniors and all of our families and individuals have the food that they need. So if you were going to a pantry to pick up your CSFP box, you would be able to get additional food there as well.
And then you also provide resources and services. Right before we went to break, we were talking about how many seniors are living with potentially taking care of their grandchildren, which then I
Yes.
would assume puts them in a little bit of a different category where SNAP is concerned, because that child, in theory, should be able to qualify for that or not.
It really depends. There are a lot of grandparents who are raising grandchildren and they don't have custody of that child. And that means that they can't get assistance for that child, even though the child lives with them. If they don't have official guardianship over that child, then they're just going to have to make ends meet however they can. And that often leads to either the grandparent or the child or both being food insecure. So it really depends on the living arrangement. I talked with a woman, she was a SNAP recipient, and she was telling me how she paid her daughter rent because she had to. She said, I get $1,500 a month and you can't find a place to live for under $1,500 a month. So I live with my daughter, but there's no paper trail. So she can't claim paying that rent. So she then isn't eligible for SNAP any longer. So you can see how this system is kind of wonky. But what we try to do at the food bank is we have a resource benefits manager who goes out and trains people to help others fill out this application. It's really interesting to me that 65 to 75% of seniors who could receive SNAP, they're eligible. They meet the income guidelines to receive SNAP. 60 to 75% of those seniors do not receive it. It's less than 30% of seniors who are eligible to receive SNAP actually receive it in Virginia. There could be a lot of things going on there too. The scenario where they can't pay the rent or they don't have documentation for the rent. There's pride. Especially in the Shenandoah Valley, a lot of people are just too proud to receive those SNAP benefits, even though they paid into the system that would bring them the benefits. It's sort of like Social Security, right? They paid into the system. And so they should receive those benefits. It's food assistance. And that's really what we're talking about. But those are the surprising things to me about SNAP. But yeah, we are trying hard to make sure that the seniors who need food assistance can get it in whatever way they choose to receive it.
We've talked briefly in the past too about food is medicine, which I
Mm.
think is such a powerful thing for people to just stop for a second and think about. But that's a program, or that's something that you also try to educate the people that come to the food bank on, and then anyone else, even me, because I didn't understand what it was until you explained it all to me.
Yeah, I love that it's an education opportunity, but so many people who come to the food bank and its network of food pantries already know what they need. So they'll talk about needing fresh fruits and vegetables. Some people need a diet high in iron, others high in protein. And so we want to make sure that people have the access to the food that meets their requirements. We know that healthy food creates a healthy environment. And as people get older, that nutrition is really important. They can manage chronic illnesses from diabetes to hypertension to heart disease and many others, kidney disease and many other diseases. They can be managed with diet in the proper way. And so food as medicine is really important to us. Janet, the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, distributed more than 33 million pounds of food last fiscal year. That was a record. That's 27.5 million meals provided through that. But here's what's great about this. A third of it, 11 million pounds, was fresh produce. So fruits and vegetables. Those cost a lot at the grocery store, and they have immense nutritional benefits to people.
The other thing that we have talked about too, and this is one of the perks to you having such a large geographic area and having so much really good data, which I hate saying when we're talking about people being hungry that that's good data, but the reality is you need that. But you're able to advocate, you're able to have a voice in front of the people that matter, that make the decisions about who says $23 is a good minimum for someone on SNAP. You're able to go to them with the authority in the field and be that expert to explain to them why that's not feasible.
That is the job of advocacy for the food bank, is to educate our elected officials. Last Monday, we met with Suhas Subramanian. He's in Virginia 10th. Last month, we met with Congressman Klein, who's the Virginia 6th. And we've recently met with McGuire, who's in the 5th. And we've had some contact with Eugene Vindman as well, who is in the 7th. It's great for us to have this data so that we can educate those elected officials. But there must be a political will to change things. And that political will comes, Janet, from your listeners. And they have to be willing to reach out to their elected officials and raise their hand and say, hey, this isn't right. Or maybe they believe that it is right. But it is important about advocating for the things that you believe are right and making sure that the elected officials that you vote for know your feelings, because they will do what we, their employers, tell them to do if enough of us do that.
I worry that people think, oh, just my voice won't matter. And that may be true in a vacuum, but that's not what this is. So if you do it and 10 of your neighbors do it, and then 20 of your grandkids do it, and then 50 of your coworkers do it, that becomes something pretty powerful.
Especially if you can do it together. And we at the food bank try to provide those resources. We have advocacy resources on our website. If you go to brafb.org/actnow, you can see some of those. And you can imagine the strength if 10 or 15 church congregations did a letter writing campaign to their congressman and said, hunger is important. We believe that no one in the Shenandoah Valley or the Virginia 6th should be hungry. Imagine the power of those congregations, 50 or 100 people at one time, and all of a sudden the congressman is getting 50 or 100 letters saying hunger is important. They're going to pay attention to that.
I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier when it comes to transportation, because one of the other things that you guys have is a mobile food pantry. So that helps a little bit with these people in some of these super rural areas.
Yeah, we put food on a truck and take it out to many local areas. I want to say we have 10 of those. That's been going on for 15 years now, Janet. And our mobile food pantries are really important. I think the closest one to you all is probably in Timberville. Yes. And so we run them throughout our area. What we try to do is take them to areas that don't have a food pantry, for instance, or to a rural community where they just don't have access to a grocery store or something like that. So we really try to get those out there and make sure that people have access to the food that they need where they need it. We've got another one in Page County too that is doing good work. In fact, our pantries there are really phenomenal. And we just stopped at Open Door in Shenandoah County last Monday. It was. They're doing great work too, seeing 400 and some families every single time they do a distribution. It's really incredible.
It is really incredible, and at the same time is pretty staggering to think that there are 400 families in Shenandoah County, and that's probably just the tip of the iceberg that need help from a food pantry like that.
And that's why those numbers are so high. 4% growth over year. When we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of people every single month, 4% is pretty significant.
So how can people help? What should they do? What could they do? How can we make this better?
I think that first is that willingness to do it. You want to do this thing, maybe even for yourself. You're like, I think we can change things. And so how do I do that? I think you've got to do two things. One, if you need help, look to the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. We've got a great website resource and you can find food where you need it. We've got a food finder there so you can find the pantry and all the information about that pantry. You can give your time, you can volunteer. We've got resources and volunteer hours at the Winchester location. You could volunteer at one of the mobile food locations or do some other specialized volunteer if you have a specialized skill. I've got someone who does voiceover work for us that volunteers. It's great. You can also give money. That money goes a long way. We buy by the truckload. So $1 helps provide more than 3 meals. And even if you're thinking, well, I can only give $5, that's 15 meals. And you combine that with everybody else who's given nickels and dollars and hundreds of dollars, and it really adds up and it helps allow us to provide 33 million pounds of food to our community. You can also advocate, brafb.org website. You can find advocacy links there and reach out to your elected officials and let them know that hunger is important and that we shouldn't have hunger in our community if that's something you believe in.
It's also important to keep in mind that while we've talked a little bit about state elected officials, some of those policies also happen on a local level too. So making sure that your elected board of supervisors or your elected town council or city council members know that this is an important issue for you also helps how they form their policies and make determinations for them on a super local level.
And if they're really interested and you can nudge them enough, they will reach out to the higher officials. So your local official goes up to the state official goes up to the federal official. It can really have a cascading effect that can change things. It's really important.
So tell me one more time before we go, what is the web address, the socials, where can people learn more about Blue Ridge Area Food Bank?
You can just search for Blue Ridge Area Food Bank. That's the easiest thing. It'll come up and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram if that's where you want to follow us as well.
Thank you, my friend, for taking the time today. I do appreciate the education.
Janet, thank you. We could not do it without the exposure that you helped provide, so we appreciate you very much.
I will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Valley Today, just a few minutes after noon, so meet me here then.